via virtual means. Victoria Ibezim-Ohaeri will be speaking to us from Port Harcourt on what the organization found out and the cries from Gede community. Good morning, Victoria Ibezim-Ohaeri.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm speaking from Lagos, not Port Harcourt.
Oh, Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us. Could you tell us what is contained in your report? What were your investigations? What have you found?
Yes, thank you so much. We have been documenting the pre and the post NSAS process incidents, particularly since the shooting at the Lekki toll gate, and our documentations are revealing a systematic pattern of governmental behavior that have the earmarks of a reprisal attack on that community. And what are the particulars of the patterns and the trends that we are seeing from our documentations? We have seen protesters' bank accounts frozen. We have seen some of them fleeing the country. Passports have been seized, and some people have been prevented from boarding flights to travel abroad. We have seen arrests and detentions of protesters across the country. We have also seen the overstretching of anti-terrorism laws to rope protesters into felonies. We have seen reports of hospital owners in Lagos that particularly treated the wounded protesters, alleging intimidation from the Lagos State Ministry of Health and one other health facility accreditation body. And we have also seen a community, Gede community, being demolished. And this community provided significant and verifiable eyewitness
in Lagos. And according to her, some of those hospitals and the operatives in the hospital have come under some kind of intimidation as far as issuing out information on the victims which they treated. Victoria is back now on the line. Victoria, please go ahead.
Yes, I don't know where the line went off. So
yeah, you talked about the hospitals where
the hospitals
are alleging treatment and the intimidation they're going through.
Yes, they have alleged intimidation from the Lagos State Ministry of Health and one of the accreditation facility monitoring and accreditation agency. We have seen now a community being demolished, and this community, Gede community, they provided significant and verifiable eyewitness accounts of the Lekki shooting incident of protesters on October 2020. So all of these documentations point to a systematic pattern of governmental behavior that have the earmarks of a reprisal attack.
All right, let's look at that statement which you put out during the visit to Gede community, and it actually, I read from the statement, it says a community leader, told S4C, which is your group, that an officer of the Nigeria Police Force accompanied by officials of the Lagos State Environmental Task Force that visited the community around February the 9th and ordered them to move out of the area without stating or giving them any timelines, and Aboki Estate residents received no visits or warnings prior to their charging, and a team of demolition officials stormed both the communities hours later and began tearing down their homes. What is the reason? Usually you give notice before demolitions. What exactly is the feelers? Is it that the community harbored some of these protesters during the NSAS issues, or what exactly is the crime of the community?
Well, the community, when we visited the community, they do not know why they are being displaced. When the first Premium Times investigation report was released and mentioned that community as having witnessed some of the incidents that
the reports that were put out by journalists.
Yes, the communities are not aware of the reactors that demolished the community. There are reports that it could have been the National Inland Waterways Authority. There are also suggestions it could have been the Lagos State Environmental Task Force. The police officers that came a day before the demolitions did not notify them about their mission and the agency that they represented. They only said leave, and the following day they came in and tore down their homes and set the whole place on fire. Meanwhile, some media reports suggest that the community was demolished for blocking the canal that connects to the Lagos Lagoon. But we disagree for two major reasons. The first is that at the end of that community, there are other structures and that are not part of the community that are still on that corridor that were spared. So if there is a blockade of the canal, everything on that corridor ought to have been removed. So it was only that community that was removed. The second reason is that over close to 10 years, we've been monitoring housing rights practices in Lagos. And again, our documentations reveal a pattern of urban development that adopts the pretext of urban renewal or drainage cleanups or road construction or crime fighting to gentrify blighted neighborhoods like Gede community. So we have examples from Badia, from Morocco of old, Otodobame that happened recently, Iluberin, Makoko, so many examples where low-income communities have been pushed away from the city and their dispossessed lands replaced with more affluent districts.
All right, what have you gotten from the Lagos State government as far as this demolition is concerned? Because initial reports suggested that there was an environmental task force that moved in with thugs to carry out this particular act, and while the bulldozers were working their jobs, the thugs were allegedly setting fires on the shanties and the buildings around there. What have you found out from the Lagos State government in line with this claim that environmental task force from the state's government were allegedly part of this demolition exercise?
We have written a letter to the Lagos State government. We have not gotten a reply yet, but we have been also looking at media reports of the incident, where in a particular report, the Lagos State Environmental Task Force denied any involvement in the demolitions. And that is concerning because that demolition was ordered by somebody. And we are trying to avoid a situation whereby it will go the way of the Lekki shooting, where an incident happens and all agencies of state deny responsibility.
Is it possible that a community like that would just be demolished with authorities allegedly of the state government present, and the state government says it's not aware?
Oh, this is not the first time that is happening. Even the Lekki shooting we are discussing, we have been seeing reports of whether or not it happened. At the beginning, they said, oh, it didn't happen. There were no soldiers. Suddenly, there were soldiers. Okay, we fired bullets. Oh, there were blank bullets. There were no deaths. Oh, there were deaths. So that has been a pattern. And we are afraid that the same thing is happening to Gede. And for Gede, we're involved because we think that community is distinct and should never have been demolished because they provide a critical, important evidence that is needed to establish that controversy around the controversies arising from the Lekki shooting incident.
Now, Victoria, I'm just wondering because from that statement, you said that a community leader actually said that officers of the Nigerian police force accompanied, by officials of the Lagos State, environmental task force had visited the community on Tuesday. So how would the Lagos State government, come out to say it is aware when some of its officials actually visited that community?
I think these are questions that should be directed at the state government, because if they are officials, it's men in uniform, and if a state government, a van adorning state government logo, color, and people wearing uniforms attributed to certain agencies visit a community, it means that they came there on the orders of somebody. So who ordered the demolitions is a question we are asking. And we're interested in understanding why that community should be demolished at a time the Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry is still investigating what happened at Lekki Tollgate that night. So under the law, the evidence should be preserved during a criminal investigation at the adjudication of dispute for the purpose of determining or ascertaining the existence or non-existence of certain facts in issue. So that destruction of that community seems to eliminate evidence that would have aided one party to prove their case.
Has this case of demolition been presented before the judicial panel inquiry in Lagos?
Okay,
and the likely impact it may have on the successful interrogation of the issues that surrounded the Lekki shooting incident of October 2020.
I wouldn't want to speak much about that because those are discussions that are happening behind the scenes. I wouldn't want to disclose some of those steps, but I think that it is important that the inquiry has been further expanded to accommodate not just the destruction of this community, all other all other incidents that point to that have the earmarks of reprisals on protesters. All of those was taken into context.
Now, the housing, the alternative houses, the houses for these persons that their homes were demolished, has there been any provided? And on the issue of compensation, is there something like that being put forward?
Historically, most communities, informal communities that have been demolished in the state, there's yet to be one example of relocation or compensation to people that have been displaced in that manner. And of course, you raise a very critical issue, which is that when people go to places like that in blighted neighborhoods to live, it points to another bigger problem, which is a problem of access to housing. So when access to housing is actually an obligation that falls squarely under government's responsibility. So it's time to have a conversation about social housing. Lateef Jakonde, the former governor of Lagos State, just died, and he left an enduring legacy, and that's the legacy of social housing, the legacy of providing access to shelter for low-income populations of the state. That legacy should provide political leaders in Lagos State the needed inspiration to do things differently. So what I see is that this problem, the problem of informal communities or proliferation of slums in Lagos, is a pointer to an underlying problem that should concern the state. And I think that this is another reawakening, another wake-up call on the government to take the issue of social housing seriously.
All right, Victoria, what, in your opinion, do you think would happen to the evidence that probably would have come out from these communities? Yes, this particular community, yes, have been demolished, but the individuals are still alive. Does it mean that they can still be accessed and they can still be useful to the hearings that is ongoing?
That is left for the panel to determine, but the destruction of evidence is harmful to a party, particularly in complicated issues of this and very sensitive issues of this nature, where there have been a lot of denials, counter-denials, facts and counterfacts. And I think that that is why I was advocating that the scope of the panel should be expanded to accommodate all other incidents that will have the earmarks of reprisal attack, including this one. It will, of course, make it even harder for communities that have video evidence, electronic, digital evidence. They have been finding it very, for protesters that have had a lot of evidence, they've been having it difficult to prove their case. Then imagine what happens where other materials or witnesses that could have helped to consolidate their case is eliminated in this matter. So this is why we're making this call on the government and on stakeholders to join.
When you say government this time, I'm sure you're referring to the National Human Rights Commission, because your statement also called on them to investigate this.
Yes, it's part of the part of our demand is for the National Human Rights Commission to investigate this matter, because it's tantamount to wiping away a significant bit of evidence that would have helped one person to prove their case.
All right, thank you very much, Victoria. Victoria Ibezim-Ohaeri is the director at the non-governmental organization Spaces for Change. She joined us from Lagos. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, many thanks indeed. It's time now to bring you entertainment and lifestyle.